Right, Alan, thank you so much indeed for joining us. We only have 20 minutes, unfortunately, and we've got a lot to cover. But the context of this session for the audience benefits is to speak, and well, to start to speak at least, about a white paper that SmartStream produced with Capron Asia. Could you start with just giving the audience a little bit of background into the purpose of that white paper, but also what were the key findings on buy-side operational resilience?
Yes, thanks, Ian, and hello, everybody. Just following on, I was listening into the previous session. It was a really, really good dialogue and a set of conversations going on there, which does flow nicely into what I've kind of prepared to go through today. Back in June last year, we did partner up with Capron Asia to do some research, a primary and secondary research paper into sort of the Asia Pacific market at that particular point in time. It was an interesting study because it really went into depth in terms of both that current point in time with the pandemic, as well as looking at the operational procedures and challenges that different buy-side firms faced at that particular point in time. It does spring up a nice contradiction if you look back at it now, because it does look at the pandemic at that specific point in time. As we know, there's been a fast-moving, daily, almost changing situation, whereas, as we know, changing automation and back-office operational procedures is a much more slowly moving operation or task, if you like. So the report does pull out many interesting challenges that different firms face, but the point I think we need to get to today, and we will reiterate this multiple times, is there's not one size fits all. Even as you saw just a moment ago, Invesco's situation is very different to APG's, and Infusion just has a different take on the whole situation. So there's not one size fits all. There's different requirements in the market. All different buy-side firms seem to be at different points in their life cycle towards digitization, to automation, and get into that situation where a pandemic or a situation where you need to go into business continuity planning environments will have the minimal impact. Okay, it was the firms that had the least amount of automation, the least amount of digitization around their operational procedures that were pretty affected the most during the pandemic, just due to the fact that they had paper-based processes, they had challenging environments already, and then you disperse staff to working from home. And how do you do those control checklists where you need to sign off pieces of paper? How do you get signatures? How do you get paper-based procedures and manual tasks to be performed in those remote or disparate working environments? So I think that's what the paper tried to highlight, tried to look at different areas in the middle and back office operations, as well as and the different challenges that each of those different areas bring in. I'll go into a bit more detail on some of them in a while, but Genio mentioned a couple of points, and I love the dissatisfactors and the satisfiers terms, such as there's different areas in the middle and back office that have different challenges associated to them. Some are deadline driven, such as corporate actions processing, where, for example, if you miss a deadline date, that has a financial impact, okay, as well as a reputational impact on your clients. And so there's different areas that you need to look at, and all of them need their own specific focus as we work through them.
I'd say, going back to what you were saying just then around different buy-side firms that we have, of course, have different needs. We have a really sort of diverse range of them dialed in today. Would you be able to go into a little bit of detail around what specific, well, maybe the journey of certain firms and what they should prioritize on as per their size and their strategy, if that makes sense?
Yeah, some of the quotes that I've mentioned a moment ago, I was picking up on again. I think any organization that's looking to update, transform its operational environments needs to work out what its target operating model is. What are the pillars of success? Okay, what is it actually looking to achieve? And then look to build the blocks that deliver the foundation and the path to deliver that target model. We've here at SmartStream worked with many different organizations, and one of the most challenging points of any implementation project or delivery projects that we have is convincing a client not just to automate their current manual process, not just to put automation around what they're doing today. Look at the opportunity of acquiring a solution or automating a process to re-architect, bring in change. Let's break it down. Let's look to see, is there a better way of doing things? Just because you've done a process for the last 10 years in a particular way doesn't mean that it's the way you have to do it going forward. So that's one of the biggest areas that we find we can really help clients, because we see lots of different organizations that start from many different positions and have pretty much generally the same goals in terms of their target operating model that they want to achieve. Industry standards are really key as well, because ultimately standardization facilitates automation. So if you're not looking to utilize industry standards, you're going off piste a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're going with the industry, going with the way that industry initiatives, SMPG, national market practice groups, etc., are driving digitization and the standardization that facilitates those processes, making sure that you buy into that to get the best results possible. A system ultimately is only as good as the data that it's fed. The data within a system provides a wonderful repository of data to start building analysis, reporting. If you're not actually reporting and measuring the process, how can you manage, how can you actually identify that you are performing well with the areas where you could particularly improve? How can you start analyzing particular types of exceptions that might be generating problems that are caused by one or two particular scenarios, a particular market, a particular asset class, a particular scenario that causes 90% of your exceptions? If you can reduce or eliminate that particular use case or that cause, you're massively reducing the amount of exceptions, the time your business users have to spend analyzing and managing those exceptions to focus on the value add elements of the environments.
So you are actually, in the same vein, looking at both the dissatisfiers and the satisfiers there. In terms of what the pandemic and the impact it's had on competitiveness in the operations field, what procedures or new operational procedures that were had to put in place during the pandemic do you think remain operational, and where does that translate to competitive advantage?
That's an interesting question. I think most of the challenges that were seen during the pandemic were due to non-automated or non-digitalized procedures, having manual tasks in place, not being able to transfer data or information around teams between, whether that's between the front office and back office, middle office and back office, or even interdepartmental within the back office. So I think the fact that all organizations have a target operating model and we're slowly getting there. I think the pandemic forced it upon us to actually look at those operating procedures and look to update, enhance the way we work. For example, we're all so used to Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever video messaging conferencing technology we use today. Microsoft Teams has become embedded within organizations. If you asked a couple of years ago, people probably wouldn't even know what Microsoft Teams was or Zoom was. We're working in a very, very different way now. We've got used to these types of meetings and communications. It's always almost become the norm. So I think that the fact that we're relying on technology so much more, we know we're relying on technology to be able to perform our day-to-day tasks. I think that's just inbred within the culture now. And now we're looking to say, right, okay, not that we have to use technology. It's how can we improve the use of technology. I think certain firms are at different journey levels in their journey, but every firm is now saying, right, okay, how can we enhance our use of technology? It was each interesting. Cliff's approach is to take the holistic view and have a single operating system, a single data repository that allows them to manage the full trade life cycle, post-trade processing environment within a single system. A lot of other organizations will have lots of different systems, maybe best-in-class solutions to meet certain functions that are joined up by APIs and a data lake, giving them the reporting capability. So achieving the same goal, achieving the same ability to pull out that data, generate those reports, deep dive into those data sets and drill into the analytical reporting that you want to generate. But there's different ways that different organizations will achieve that same goal. So, I mean, that as well as the adoption of cloud environments gives a whole new kind of looking glass on the way that you can drive towards what will be your ultimate optimal target operating model to achieve efficiencies, to achieve the visibility and the transparency of your operations, to manage and mitigate risk in all of your operational procedures, to make sure you're compliant with regulatory requirements and all the reporting around that. So there's multiple different facets, multiple different angles that you need to look at, whether that's across the entire middle and back office, or whether you're just focusing on one specific function, one of those dissatisfiers or one of those satisfiers, such as the corporate action process. Okay, if that's not all automated, okay, that's a big risky area, probably lots of paper flying about, a very manual environment. Okay, if you put automation around that, is that a module within an existing platform that will give you some functionality, or is that a standalone corporate action processing solution that will deliver the full end-to-end processing capabilities, but then has the connectors, the APIs, and the integration capabilities to work with the other solutions that you have in your middle and back office. So again, it's a decision that all different firms will need to make based on their current setup, their current environment, their objectives, and where they currently are in that journey.
It's an interesting point where they are in their journey. Throughout the morning, we've had the terms of AI, machine learning, cloud computing sort of raised, and I know that it was discussed in your white paper. Could you explain how each of these technologies will affect the investment operations in the long term and what they'll mean for the industry?
Yeah, well, I think they're having a big impact already. So it's just going to continue to enhance the way that people are working. We have a number of solutions that have AI, ML embedded in them today, and clients are benefiting from those. We have some specific solutions that are purely cloud native and AI modeled. For example, we're working with a number of different organizations, both during implementation and both that are already in a production environment, with our pure AI reconciliation tool. That has completely thrown away the rulebook from an implementation point of view. So once you understand and collect the data, okay, we're now talking about implementation timescales and consulting that's required in days and hours rather than weeks and months, because the AI technology now will automatically identify, understand the data sets that are being provided, correlate that data, build business rules, present automated results against data sets that no human has had to map, had to process, had to analyze. The system is doing all of that crunching for you now, and you simply review the outputs of the AI that's continuously enhancing, continuously developing from the inputs and the exception management that will be generated. But once you've tweaked and tailored some of the business rules, you're then in a production environment, and that can be in a matter of days or weeks rather than these long, lengthy projects. that most firms are very familiar with to get a solution in play. The fact that it's fully hosted, it's fully managed on behalf of organizations as well, eliminates the cost of ownership in terms of hosting hardware, managing the environment. The fact that you can onboard new reconciliations, new data sets, have instant visibility of those data sets and continuously enhance the reports and the analysis you do into that data set, I think just really puts us in a brand new world. Okay, it's not going to fix all of our problems, but it really does change the paradigm in terms of how quickly we can get clients into a production environment and how quickly they can start onboarding their books of work that they have in their back office that needs to be or move to that automated framework. We work with many different organizations that will have automated part of their business process flow, but there's always a backlog of work. There's always new requirements coming down the line. So how do you phase that onto the automated process flow? How do you give clients that path to be able to deal with the pressures of today, the business as usual, as well as all of that backlog, as well as the new requirements that are coming down the line.
And I suppose it's having a fundamental impact on who operational leaders are within investment management firms and what type of leaders they are. We've only got a couple of minutes. I was just going to say, I'm not sure you'd be able to or allowed to, but could you share a couple of use cases from some of the conversations we've been having?
Yeah, just linking into some of the conversations earlier today, we've been dealing with a number of organizations in the region. A couple that jump out to mind. One, with regards to an organization that did have a central team processing each of their country-specific, a central team in each location, processing all of their different reconciliation and back office requirements. What they look to do is create a single centralized environment that could process all the different entities' requirements in one central location. Okay, it's interesting in the region as well because of the different regulatory requirements and landscapes. We worked with this organization to onboard all of the different entities' data into a single environment and create a single shared service operations team, massively reducing the overhead or the duplication of effort that was being performed across the different regional locations. But then the different regions that had those regulatory requirements for example, sovereignty of data, data had to be kept in country, we simply created a spoke operation for them to be able to manage their own data in country. So again, it depends on understanding the requirements, understanding what your target operating model is, and understanding the requirements and any regulatory or compliance issues you'll need to obviously comply with during the delivery of those projects. But as I said at the start, it is a change management process you need to go through, and you really need to adopt that change management mindset to really get the best bang for your buck during these projects. Another one is the adoption of AI. As I mentioned earlier, the time in which we can deliver solutions now is really something that's never been seen before. We're delivering hours of consultancy to get clients onboarded into a production environment with the use of cloud native technology, with the use of AI and ML techniques that are embedded into the solutions today. Obviously, there's still the human interaction, the human checkpoints, and the human enhancements into resolving exceptions or to tweaking business rules. But I think we're in a really good position. And that's just going to grow and accelerate as the technology always does.
Yeah, there was a question from the floor, but I think you've adequately answered it just then. It was around how companies should identify what is best for them in terms of technological change, i.e. balancing budget considerations. But I think you've given that justice already. So Alan, unfortunately we are out of time. But thank you so much for an extremely enjoyable session. It's very much appreciated. And up next, we have our closing interview on talent management with the Regional Operating Officer of T. Rowe Price. So stick around. But Alan, thank you very much. Again.
Thank you, sir. Cheers all.